So hi, I'm Greg.
Hi, Greg.
Thanks. I do spell with two G's at the end like egg because sometimes I'm a little scrambled every now and then I'm over easy, but no matter what I try and be sunny side up.
Do you do that like on your own? Is that on your birth certificate?
It is not. It's my mom's fault for the two G's thing. But I do,
Wait, it's on your birth certificate?
It's not.
Oh.
Gregory's on my birth certificate. We won't, but we're gonna set that aside now.
Oh.
Hi, am I live? Good, cool. That's live streaming. You can go back and watch this later. I'm Greg. I teach English 101, 102, tech writing, and mythology here on campus. I also am the club advisor for the D&D club, which meets 2 nights a week. If you want the information on that, I've got these little cards. You're welcome to grab them. Actually, Noella, since you're one of our council presidents, which is why she sasses me so much. It's a friendly banter, I swear.
Everyone sasses you.
That's valid. Margot can attest to other teachers sassing me in the classroom, and it's part of the fun. But I am the D&D club advisor. We meet 2 nights a week from 5 to 8:30 Mondays and Thursdays. We usually have somewhere between 15 and 30 students, 3 to 5 tables. I tend to do a lot of weird things in my classroom with fancy projects and stuff. One other role I have is co-coordinator of learning communities, but for today, this specific workshop is kind of the crash course in developing kids' books. We're going to look at the process for developing characters that are worth having in kids' books, and then using some of the strategies that actually work well even if you're not kids' book oriented. You want to do comic books or some other sort of webcomic, sequential art, or if you're just interested in, there's just a lot of applications we'll talk more about later. For today, the things you have in front of you, we are going to try and develop a meaningful character that's going to have some depth to it, and also keep in mind the genre of the kids' book, the audience, those sorts of things, and try and get you a roughed-in plot line for one that you could go theoretically write later. And all of that in, I think, an hour and 15 minutes, whatever I put on the schedule. Tell me when to stop when I'm supposed to switch to the other workshop after this, which is empathy through games and kids' books. So, as a place to start, most kids' books, you can be motivated to write a story from anywhere. You can be inspired by something you see. You can be inspired by experiences you have. So you can be observant, you can be creative, make it up on the fly, or you can draw on your own experiences. And so that was, I can't remember if it's Faulkner who said it, but a writer needs at least one of these 3, and hi Julie. 2, if even better, you need to be either creative, observant, or have meaningful life experiences to write something worth reading. So that's his kind of take on what makes a good creative writer. Be good at least one of those things. So your source material can come from anywhere. When I use this in the classroom, we will draw on course content. So when I'm teaching my writing class alongside a math class, they have to come up with kid stories that somehow incorporate the math that they're learning at a college level, and then they go share it with kids. But one of the things that makes for the most compelling of stories are characters that we can invest in. And Julie, if you want to grab either of those handouts, you can there.
Oh, right, this is for the con, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're welcome to hang out. But if you want the handouts, you can have them there. So the first things, I like to use the hat model, both if I'm doing a D&D workshop or when I'm talking about character development for any other story. So when we are thinking about role play, or when we're thinking about getting into the mind of someone else or another character, you can use this hat model because it's like putting on the hat, right? I'm going to become a construction worker. I put on the construction worker hat. I put on the businessman bowler cap, or whatever it is, right? I put on the chef's hat. So, so when we think about the hat model, some things you can ask yourself. So if you've got meaningful, try and think of some, you can make it up on the fly. You can use yourself as a model, or you can just choose from any source. It could be your favorite character in some other story, and you could say, okay, well, I'm going to spin it a different way. So the hat model says, what do I hate, what do I do, what do I adore, and who do I trust? And so you can start answering some of those questions for your character. And I'll tell you why those matter in a moment, but I'll let you take a moment and say, okay. And so that's on the character handout. get one of those.
I did not get one of those.
Oh, I didn't realize there were two.
I didn't realize there were two.
Did you get one?
That is one child.
So, the hat model is to say I'm going to put on the hat of this character. I'm going to think the way they think. I'm going to believe and kind of get into the mindset that they would lean into, because that's how I can figure out what choices this character will make when I put them into a certain situation.
Do they have to hate somebody?
They can hate a thing.
I know they hate a thing. but-
So it helps to have some version of that. The reason I use the strong language of hate and adore and trust, hate is never something you want to encourage. But it's really, when you're telling a story, you increase the likelihood that the story is meaningful by raising the stakes. So for this character, when we say this character hates something, it is just a way of, what are they willing to not put up with? Because people will go along to get along. Characters in a lot of contexts will float by until they're triggered by something. And that's when the story begins, right? Because it's no longer the status quo. And we'll talk more about big picture story arcs, even if briefly.
But what if the story you're thinking of, they don't have like somebody?
You can use the other ones. It can be a who or a what. It could be chocolate. It could be homework.
Yeah.
It could be cats.
But like, yeah, there's not really like a secondary character.
Yet. Or maybe you create the secondary character. Don't overthink it. If that question doesn't resonate, go to the next one.
Okay.
It's not, when we're writing stories and trying to brainstorm quickly, it's not about figuring out the perfect answer. It's about laying the foundation for a story. And most stories are crappy at first. And that's okay. That's part of the process.
Most stories are crap.
At first. And even then, it depends on how you define that as a criteria. So we can think a little bit through this and keep writing on your papers if you are so inspired. But if we're thinking about what something hates, if we're specifically thinking kids book, it's probably not going to be some deep political thing, commentary thing. It's probably going to be an everyday thing. Like, I hate being lonely, so I actively seek out friends or the approval of others. Or I hate being the smartest in class because people make fun of me for knowing math. Or the opposite, I hate feeling like the dumbest in class because I never know the answers the teacher has. In some of the books I have up here, they're really meaningful. I'm not sure if I can find this one. And Julie, what are we doing? Back here, just making sure we're not. You guys got to run?
Back in like an hour.
All right, peace out.
Bye-bye.
Okay. They hung out for earlier, just for context. Okay, so like for instance, this book, Painted Words, is on one side and Spoken Memories on the other. This is the story about someone who doesn't speak English as a first language. They get put into a class where they don't understand the language, and so they don't have any other way to communicate except through their art, and so that's the story of Painted Words. And then we start to see like the teacher's words, like they know like one word in a sentence of 10. And the struggles that this character goes through. So her sense of isolation and loneliness, she learns that her art can help her overcome that, because people then see her art, understand her more, and she starts. It helps her start to engage in a different way in the world around her. So that becomes the motivation we see there. And we can see these in a variety of stories if you think through. So again, when we're using the terms hate or adore or trust, these are the things that give our characters things that are a little more unique. Also, like just as a starting place, when I said, to contextualize what I said earlier about all stories start out kind of crappy, like that's really context. And it's really to set the bar so low that you can't help but write the story you want to write. It's okay if the first draft feels like something you've already read or seen. As a reminder, 50 Shades of Grey started out as a fan fiction. for the Twilight series, right? They went, what if he's not a vampire? What if he's just a really powerful businessman? And then wrote that from that perspective. That's how that started. And ultimately, they ended up changing the names and remarketing it as its own thing. So even if what you feel like you're writing about starts out feeling kind of derivative or less than original, it's not so much about whether that story's been told before, because if we look in classical mythologies, if we think about like the hero's journey and Hero with a Thousand Faces, if we look through classic mythological stories, you can probably find something that aligns somewhere with a story you've already told. And you've been taking in inputs and you know what you know. So those are going to be the things that come out in your stories. So if in your first draft it doesn't feel super original, that's okay. If you're staying fairly simplistic at first, that's okay. The point is to get something written so that you can keep making progress. Because if you have nothing, you can't tweak it. And to write perfect from scratch is why so many people have PTS for writing in their writing classes. Because they try and write the perfect essay the first time instead of drafting steadily over time and improving over time. So with that as context and as a mindset for writing, we'll keep jumping in. So we want to think about, what does our character hate? What does our character adore? What does our character, who does our character trust? If we're specifically looking at kids' books, we can also ask ourselves, like, if my main character has these things, as we're asking who or what do they adore or who or what do they trust, we can say, okay, is there someone or something that they have as a sidekick? Kids' books can sometimes play with silly creatures, so we might have a puppy sidekick or a cat sidekick or whatever, and you can decide based on your character whether that's something that's relevant. You can also say, is there someone, it doesn't have to be like an 8-year-old hating another kid to violence or something, but who's someone that gets in their way? When we say why someone hates something, sometimes that's a motivating factor, and sometimes it's because that thing or that person keeps them from making progress on the goal they have, whatever it is. I'm so lonely, but I can't sit, but this bully keeps messing with me, and until I resolve my issue with them, I can't seem to make friends with the rest of the class. And so then that story becomes about that. And that sounds very, that leans into kind of a story archetype or trope. So, so far, what has this made you think about? Just to do a check-in real quick. Yeah. Kaylee.
I have a duck that likes to paint, but he struggles with imperfection.
Okay, that works. Other people? Actually, we didn't do a full round of introductions. I kind of just said, that's no Ella, and she left. So, what's your name?
Jacob.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Are you here for, what brought you here today?
It's for the honors.
Co-curricular?
Co-curricular.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
My name is PJ. I'm also here for the co-curricular.
All right, sounds good. Good to have you, PJ. Awesome.
But I also like learning about the kids' books.
Yay. Well, I'm glad
I
that,
don't
did
care.
you like that before you got into my class, or in the fall?
I like aspects of it.
It kind of worked out, okay.
Yeah.
Great
Not that
music.
you like the way it happened in the book. Also, your public show is still amazing. So, yeah. Well, good. So I'll ask, if it's for co-curricular, is it because this is the only one that met your schedule? Or was it the one that sounded the most interesting?
The second one.
Both? I'll take both. Okay, cool. I just wanted to check. So keep in mind, like, as you think about characters, I think I said you can draw inspiration from everywhere, and I gave you an example. You can create kids' books that just tell meaningful stories, that engage with somebody's cultural background, that are based on real people, like, I've got the Abraham Lincoln one somewhere up here.
Right there.
I've got ones that help teach math circumference here. That's a fun and cheesy one. Science-based ones, when down comes the rain. We have ones that actually are kind of fun logically, or just anything you can think of. It can be put into a story. And it doesn't have to be in English. So I'm just trying to make sure you know the variety. So I even have the 3 little pigs here in Los Tres Cerditos. That's also got its Spanish on one side, English on the other, or Spanish on top, English on bottom. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot of variety when you're writing stories. You can choose any genre, and so it's important to kind of engage with. The more you make decisions about what audience you want to engage in, what genre you want to engage in, you start to get a more individualized, unique story. You could have the same character but drop them in different worlds with different people, and suddenly.
On that thought, that sign out there, it said something about like a D&D, whatever.
Yes, that was at 10 this morning. So the D&D one was at 10, and then we've got another D&D stuff on Thursday.
Something about game characters.
Yep. So so when we can draw on those same things and developing the characters.
Video games.
Yes.
Yeah. Games or video games, whatever.
Yes. So any of those contexts, changing the genre can change how we use these characters, can change the logistics of them, and moving them from setting to setting or incorporating different problems really is one of the ways that those characters you've started building are unique. So as we work down the basic character, we get past the hat model, and then we can start thinking, well, what does this character look like? If I'm going to describe them, I want to think the 5 senses. And so you could draw them, and so you've got space for that. But also think, like, what do they look like? If there's any other unique, like, are there unique features, especially with kids' books, oversimplifying things to make the character more detailed is a pretty common practice. So if we look at the art lesson, what do we notice about this book's main character? If we're just looking at the cover, what's identifiable here?
Big hair.
Yeah, he's got kind of big, messy hair. And when we go into other parts of this, we see different attributes. His teacher has smooth hair. His classmates have I think that's a hat or smooth hair, and they're a little taller, right? We see and so it's one of those things where we can start looking for things. With little kids, it's like you can get away with stick figures that have one identifiable feature, because kids think representatively. You tell them that the thing with the triangle is a dog, then the thing with the triangle is a dog, right? And they'll read with you. And adults will be, maybe you'll get like a hypercritical kid that's like a little more intense, and like, no, dogs should have ears. It's like, okay, cool. But, most of the time it's the adults who are like, that's a terrible drawing of a dog. I'm like, dude, it's a triangle representing a dog. And when you become an engineer, you'll have to think like this, because trying to do an electrical circuit diagram with more complex symbols, and people get confused. I'm just saying. Okay, in this case, we can also see like identifiable for a kid's book, Abraham Lincoln, right? And if you've seen the Who Was history books, they'll have like the big bobblehead style, but there will be one key feature about that person. Or the, what's the PBS, Xavier Riddle in the Secret Museum? It's always, there's one artifact or one clothing item or one feature about them that stands out to make them the identifiable character, or to make that character identifiable. So we want to think about what the character looks like, and we can go into the other 4 senses. So we can say, what do they look like? What do they smell like? If we got Pigpen from Charlie Brown, what do they feel like? Is their clothes scratchy, or do they have something like that? How did I say? So smell, taste, touch, sound. What do they sound like? So is there some sort of vocal register? So depending on what kind of story we're trying to tell, any of those 5 senses are going to be meaningful. So it can help to draw it, and again, you can do stick figure, and so doing a quick drawing of the character is meaningful there. I do like to say I don't have it on this sheet, but if your character had a sidekick, draw it in the space next to the box, or in the box if there's still space.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
You can sign in there, grab one of those, and find a happy place.
That's
Yeah, sign this, and then you can grab one of those with a pen.
okay. I'm sorry if I interrupted.
All good, all good. And if you're someone who's not sure if children's books is the genre for you, and like Julie said, you want to do something more video game oriented, and you tend to like first-person shooters, what does the sidekick look like? That's if it's not a kid's book.
Consider like the horror for example, Poppy Playtime. You got know the main characters, but like we got like, for example, Poppy wants to save the orphans from the that are in the prototype player, but you know.
I don't know that story, so I was waiting for you to give me context. But I like that it's registering as a good example for you, so that's good. So if you know Poppy's Playhouse, is that what you said?
Playtime.
Poppy Playtime, then maybe that's something there. I don't understand the reference because I don't know it, but there's a lot of things I don't know. So we can think, if we're trying to translate it into another genre, we can use these same strategies for that. For today, we're doing kids' books, but it's good to think about.
Like whatever make your for you can have like maybe like the player in mind. This whole this is what the player wants for this character.
Okay.
For this character that they're playing as.
I'm in one place. Sorry.
Okay.
You know, like this is what the player wants for the character.
That's an option.
But then this is what's stopping that from happening.
Okay.
Like there's monster that jump scares you. You know.
Yeah. Okay. So if we're working down the list, so we can think about what our character looks like. We can think about what their sidekick looks like. And if we're trying to shift into, say, a first-person shooter, maybe if that's like a zombie house, somehow we get a zombie dog instead, right? But you can decide, or maybe it's like a floating ghost apparition of some kind that wants to follow us around. In Halo, who's the sidekick in Halo? Anybody know?
I played that so well.
Anybody? Who, the little glowy lady?
Or maybe it's something that could be
Cortana.
Cortana is the answer I'm looking for right now.
Something that could be more recognizable, like I don't know, Mario Odyssey, and you have Cappy. And
Yes.
Mario.
Yes,
Mario
like Cappy could count as Mario's sidekick. Okay, so when we're looking at it, so we want to think who's a sidekick, and we can also think like who's that antagonist, who's the enemy, who's the thing they hate or person they hate. And so trying to take a moment before you start thinking full plot line of who is this person, what do they look like, or what are their key features. And so if you want to add that to that box or in the side margin of your character sheet, do that. Julie, did you need something drawn with that? Did you get one of these? Did you get a chance to draw any of this? You can draw it in there if you want. So we can ask those questions. I do have on the handout some of the links to some of the different materials or connections to Club or my YouTube, if you want those. These 3 lines are. So you can just go. I'm just giving you something to write with right now. So just do your best to track with it. Okay. So. With that, I'm going to bring up some notes for this next part. Actually, let's share what you have so far. So let's work left to right. So share what you have.
My character hates bees.
Okay. And I'm listening. I'm just trying to move a window over at the same time.
He hates his sister because she always gets him in trouble. He loves chocolate. He loves his mom, and he trusts his dad. He's tall, has brown hair, and wears a watch.
Okay. Good. So hates bees. You said loves chocolate?
Yeah, he loves chocolate. Hates his sister. And then loves his mom. Trusts his dad.
Cool. So that gives us a place to start. What do you got?
So, my character hates mushrooms, and he hates the aliens that shoot mushroom guns, and he adores his water gun that disintegrates aliens, and he loves his close ones. He trusts his dog, who's also his sidekick.
So water guns are involved, and he's got a dog sidekick.
Yep.
And I like the water guns used to destroy the mushroom aliens.
Yes.
I like it. Kaylee?
My character hates imperfection, loves painting, he loves his mom and he trusts his mom. And he's a little duck with overalls and a propeller hat.
That's a great option for a kid's book. Is a duck with a propeller hat. It's so hard to see from this angle. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. And I am using, I had, when I was doing a workshop with this last year, I decided to, one of the participants, I had a helper who did all the notes on the board. So to honor them, I'm using them as the slideshow instead of creating something prettier. So that's part of the fun of it. So good. Okay, so that's Kaylee. Keep going.
My character hates the wind and their sidekick. They adore wearing clothes and their mom, and then they trust only themselves.
Okay.
My character is a wizard cat, and they hate how wizards always meet human. They also hate their sidekick. Their character they adore their wizard club, and I don't have a character they adore, but they trust their mentor the most.
Okay. I really like this idea of a cat that keeps getting talked to, like, oh, you've got such a sweet familiar. No, I'm a wizard, right? And just like throw it a bit, like, you know, I'm just saying, that's a fun one. I like it. Cool. Julie, what'd you have? As a character.
Well, this is in the context of like you know the indie horror games. If you know any like FNAF, Bendy, Poppy Playtime. Oh, this is in the context of a kind of a game, a horror game, and it's and you know you were a former employee of a game developer studio.
Okay.
And so basically the first chapter you have to do a little task and then you were invited back to the studio.
Okay, so
after exposure and you have to do a little task.
So let me ask you here, because I have 3 questions I want you to answer. What does that character hate? Because you're focused on tests. What does that character hate?
Like they're kind of not the character I'm gonna focus on. I'm getting there. So basically you do those tasks. You go to leave, but then you're pulled into one of the computers.
Okay, so that's a good idea. You're thinking a lot about setting and action, which is good. Hold on. Hold on, Julie. Julie, hold on. Just wait.
Well, I'm not focusing on the player here. I'm just doing some setup.
I know.
Okay.
So I asked you a specific question. What does your character hate, adore, and who do they trust? So if you don't have those answers yet, we'll get to setting. We're not talking about it yet.
No, I'm just building up to the character that I'm going to talk about.
Okay, so then we don't have time for you to set the setting for us.
It's a character that, well, technically 2 characters that will be in the I'm thinking will be in the second chapter. Okay, and the
So here's what I want you to do: write some of that down until you get to the questions about the specific character, and then I'll ask you again, okay? But it's not time for setting sharing yet. Okay? We're not there yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. I will.
But sometimes, this is an important part about writing. Sometimes you do have to think through the setting, and it can be good to think through the setting as part of your world building. There is a reason I start with character, because we can have really good concepts, but if it's not anchored to character development, it doesn't get personalized in the story, and people don't buy into it. So you can have a nice shtick or a really cool context that plays into someone's interest in computers or interest in zombies or interest in whatever. But if there's not a narrative story that goes along with it, that watches the development of a specific character or 2 or 3, then we don't get the benefit and payoff of promises met about that character development. So that's one of the reasons why I'm saying hold on.
Yeah.
Because we're not there yet, because the emphasis first is character.
But I haven't getting to the character, so.
I know, and wait, Julie, Julie, I'm having a hard time because I don't think you're listening.
I'm sorry, but the two characters are, well, basically they're twins, they're dolls,
Okay.
and they're like, they wear pajamas, they're sun and moon themed.
Okay, good. So that works well. Okay, so just to think through character, we've talked about it using the hat model. What I hate, what do I adore, who do I trust? Another way to look at it sometimes is described in what are their personality traits, and now we can add a little more detail. So they have things they hate, they adore, or people they trust, and that connects them to the outside world. Now we want to say, okay, what are the things that they engage with? What are their personality traits, their strengths, their skill sets, their struggles, their weaknesses, and some of those may have come up. And so you can see there's a few things when we're thinking about the development of that character. Let me see if it zooms in on those. So some of these we already engage with, but on that sheet, write what the strengths and struggles are. It could be part of what you've already given. And we'll try and go through the next piece fairly quickly so we can start talking about storyboarding.
So you want us to look at the tree?
So yeah, or just at least the two in the middle, that
Strengths
didn't
and
work.
struggles.
Strengths and struggles.
Good.
Yeah, so what is this character's strength and struggle? And how does you might be able to say, how does that play in? So you can put it in the margin or on the bottom or on the back. The hat model is a great place to start for the core character, kind of as they're situated relationally. What are their skills or strategies, weaknesses or quirks? Okay, I'm going to push forward. You've got the questions. You can keep thinking about it. So we can also look at their ideals, things they believe about themselves. This could lean into those hate, adore, or trust situations. Things they believe about themselves, things they believe about others or the world. And any one of those things could be what they choose, what we show them growing in. Especially with a kid's book, the focus is very targeted. We usually don't have multiple complex threads. It's not an epic fantasy, so we're not doing things like Tolkien would do, or we might see Brandon Sanderson do, or the Wheel of Time series with Robert Jordan. We're not seeing those kind of multi-arc complex storylines, or Star Wars. We're seeing usually picking one specific thing to focus in on. Having the background for your characters can be meaningful as you go to see how they're going to interact in the world. But you can ultimately choose just one thing to focus on. Let's see. No, go back. Went too far. And so we've asked a little bit of this. Who's a friend? Who's an enemy? Or who's a competitor? Who's a sidekick? We can start asking the questions now, having the core of the character. What is the setting? If I do have, if I want it to be a story for a kid's book, I have to think through who my target audience is. One of the things that novel writers and kids books writers will do is they'll make the main protagonist most like their target audience. And this is where we do get a little complexity if we're wanting to think why the children's book does have 70% male white protagonists. It's like, well, they're looking at their demographic and trying to target specific parts of their demographic. There's still a challenge in why that would be the demographic. If you're trying to get, if the kids who have the hardest time reading are young men, if girls are more likely to read, well then maybe they feel like they don't have to target books, or maybe parents buy books for guys more often. And these are complex business decisions they make that sometimes also play into representation in stories. So we can think about these things and chew on them and say, who do I want my protagonist to be? Who do I want my main character to be? And how is that going to engage? It's also why a lot of kids' books will have animals as the main character, because now we're appealing to a much broader audience that way. So we can ask questions. What does the audience need to learn? How does your character treat others? How do your characters teach? What needs to happen for the character to learn? Who are their mentors? Some of these kind of standard story questions. And then we can think traditional story arc. And I actually do have a better slide than that, so let's do that. With that, these are the kinds of things you've probably learned since 4th or 5th grade or 6th grade. Whenever we have Aristotle says, every good piece of writing or every story has a clear beginning, middle, and end, which seems obvious, but sometimes you have stories that start with promises that never get met. And so we want to be thinking about what that arc looks like. I like to use the example of Aladdin as a starting character, because what do we see in the first scene of Aladdin? Do you guys remember?
He's stealing bread.
He's stealing bread. He's bouncing around with his monkey Apu, right? Does he end up eating the bread? Who here has seen the movie, any of the versions of Aladdin? Okay.
He doesn't end up eating the bread.
Okay, so he's stealing bread. What do we learn about the marketplace scene where he steals bread? About Aladdin. What does he do? Oh, anybody? You said you'd seen it. Has it just been a while?
I've seen it, yeah. It's just,
Okay.
It's been really long.
He steals. Okay. Bread specifically. Not like riches or jewelry or anything, right? And then who ends up eating the bread?
You know, who knows?
Margot?
To a kid.
He hands it to the kid at the end, right?
2 kids.
2 kids. So he'll steal when it's necessary, and you can kind of hear that in some of the preamble of the Arabian Nights dialogue. We see that he's physically capable, he's dexterous. He is willing to break the rules, but only when there's a need. And ultimately, he does it selflessly, because while he could have kept it for himself, and it's almost like he probably planned on it, he gets to a place where he realizes there are kids who need it more than him, and he's self-sacrificial. So in that first scene where it's supposed to feel like we're being introduced to a street kid criminal kind of urchin thing, it actually signals some promises about his character over time that we will see show up later when he self-sacrifices with Genie, and thinks about others, when his nimbleness and quick creativity and his connectedness to Apu become key features of who he is. And so we see that trajectory or that arc. So when we're thinking storyline, even if it's simplistic or in a simpler form in kids' books, often we'll see an opening scene that establishes the promises and the tensions of the book or the character that are going to get resolved by the end. We go through a series of crises where the tension builds, and as we see them resolved, we get introduced to the character's decision-making process. And we can see how they make decisions and whether they grow in those decision-making. So sometimes a small crisis, like we see Aladdin's hungry, so he's willing to steal, reveals his character. Sometimes that gets mirrored later in a big crisis, and sometimes it gets reversed. Like if someone is if you're trying to set up a bully narrative, they get confronted by a bully and they don't know how to deal with that, and it doesn't go well. Whatever happens in that scenario, then when they come back by the end of the movie, they've theoretically learned and grown, and now they're engaging with the bully in a different way. I think of Andrew Garfield's interaction with, is it Flash? Flash is kind of picking on people. Andrew Garfield sticks up to him, gets punched. Andrew Garfield becomes Spider-Man and ends up shutting Flash down. But then I think in the second movie, we see him and Flash connecting. Like he gets a better understanding of who Flash is, and they bond. They have this deeper relationship, right?
For a second, I thought you meant like the superhero Flash.
No, I can't remember who. I think that's just the kid's name, right? And so we get that. We kind of see that trajectory where the situation changes, even though it's a parallel. We see the character growth over time. Okay, I'm probably gonna pull away from these now. Okay, those are just some examples. All right, we'll just stop there. So we have all these, and again, this is like the crash course of this. So we have all these elements that we can engage with. We want to start with a character who's worth spending time with, and who we can think deeply enough about to put them in a social, interpersonal context, and engage with what kinds of decisions they have to make. So then, once we have that character, we can start asking ourselves questions about setting. So what kind of setting do you want to have? If you haven't written that down, let's just do a basic, like if you're on your, this is a storyboard, by the way, just to introduce you to the genre, in case you've never heard of it. A storyboard is a fast drafting planning document. It is meant to be a little closer to chicken scratch scribbles or fast drawn visuals, so that for planning purpose. So you're not trying to get every detail, you're kind of getting a representative scene. And this is a really common genre to use in film, in stage production, as we think scene to scene to scene. It works well if we're trying to plan camera angles or comic books and kids books. It also, just as a side note, can be used in academic context. If you ever wrote an essay and you wanted to make sure it made sense at a big picture level, like Fix Your Flow or something, you can do a visual representation of every paragraph in an essay and see if the paragraphs sequence in a way that makes sense. So that's one just side bonus. All right, so in the first box, draw a picture of the general setting. Like if we're zoomed out, if we think Star Wars, it's we get that setting in the text about the universe, but we also see the space and starship fly into the screen before anything else happens. So what is the setting, the starter for this, that you're going to place this character into? Just take like a minute and do some drawing or sketching and write a little blurb underneath.
I guess it's also representing the audience. It could literally be the audience.
That'd be you could if you're
think a game where like you yourself who is playing is the character that is experiencing these events.
Yes, and so if you were going to do a game where you wanted to be very meta with the player and kind of let them see an audience watching someone play a game, like Ready Player One style or something, that's an option.
I think more in the first person at the theater, like the first person perspective,
Yes.
where you yourself are in that setting. For example, let's talk about any horror game. You yourself is at that company dealing with all those spooky monsters that jump scare you.
Yeah, so why don't you write that or draw that in your box? Questions?
No, we're just kind of collaborating.
Okay. You're sharing a setting but two stories?
No, we're sharing characters, but two stories.
Nice. I like it. How are you feeling about yours?
Pretty good. A little baseball game going on.
Nice.
Called the big game.
Very cool. What do you got?
They're starting. It's like a beach house. There's playing frisbee with the dog.
Cool. Kaylee, what are you doing for setting?
First, he goes to a grocery store called Clockwork.
I like it. So we're going to Grand Supermarket. Olivia, what's your setting? It looks like a micro from here. That's awesome. Hey, that's nice. Okay. So yeah, cool. So at the lake, and remind me what your character was again?
I like it just a humanoid cat.
Okay. Oh, that's yeah. No, it's totally. And then where are you at the wizarding school for cats?
My cat, he's a neighbor,
Oh.
old wizard. Animation.
I gotcha.
You know the fun cat.
I like it. It's a impromptu one, and then you were talking about the ghost one or the meta one.
And then okay, so no, let's assume like just play our character at like a general,
Yeah.
so you got the game studio
Mhm.
that you yourself play you yourself that first perspective character is how worked at in the past.
Mhm. Okay, so if you've got your setting roughed in and you think you kind of have that opening spot, the next thing we want to do is do a rough sketch of 5 scenes. And if you're thinking about it, like the first scene, we have to be introduced to the character. So rough in a sketch of what that opening scene is, like what do we see the character doing? So this is, you've got the setting, which is the big picture, maybe that's the cover of the book. When we zoom in the first scene, what's the character doing? So that was Aladdin in the marketplace. Then what's the crisis that's actually the point of the story? Get there. Do those 2 first.
Okay, so what I'm kind of envisioning in terms of like first person perspective, player character. So what happens is you have the ladder, you have whatever form of a message that would be urging us the player character, the player character to go back to the game studio.
Yeah. So your setting's the game studio. So then draw the opening scene where the player or the people watching the game are introduced to that main character. What are they doing? What's the action of that?
So do you want me to fit the story in 6 panels?
Yeah, so try and do the quick version of the story in 6 panels or less. That's what you ultimately want to do.
Okay.
So that might look something, if we're using a traditional story arc, what's it like? Big picture, introduction to the character, introduction to their tension or enemy or thing they hate, how they grow. That could be the mentor, that could be the sidekick, and then roughly how it's the final culminating version of that, and then how they end. That's the fast version. But do whatever comes to mind as far as scenes that you have clear. Because one of the things that can happen is if you go with the scenes you have clear, you can always chop this paper up and move them around. That's one of the great parts of this type of storyboarding. If you know you can see specific scenes, start with those and then connect the dots. It may be more useful to start at the very end and say, here's where I want them to end up, and then decide how that happens by backtrack or reverse engineering.
What I was thinking, breaking it down, there were 2 conflicts, and I'm trying to pick which conflict I want to focus on because I want it to be more streamlined into conflict resolution, not conflict
So what are the 2
resolution.
conflicts you have?
Well, first I was gonna do like he goes to the store to get paint, and then there's no so he has to ask somebody for help and go find the paint or whatever. And then he goes home and paints a picture. And the whole thing was supposed to be all that work for like he was frustrated because he did all that work, and then he painted the picture and he wasn't happy like with how the background turned out. And then the mom would be like, "It's beautiful the way it is. Like, you're gonna have to learn and grow and get better." And she hangs up on the fridge. That was the story.
So yeah, you do have 2 tensions there. One is I need paint to paint my masterpiece, and the other is I have a self-worth issue.
Yeah.
And so doing both of those arcs in a kid's book could be confusing.
Yeah. That's
So if it's he's frustrated and he's trying to, he needs paint because he has a vision of something he wants to produce, that can be a great arc.
So I'm thinking maybe I don't start at the store.
So if it's something where going to the store and trying to find the paint is part of the rising action, and then he finds the paint and gets to go home and masterpiece. Like that's one version of it, and then the other is he has the supplies, but something's happening about his identity at home that his mom has to give encouragement.
I want the moral of the story to be, you're not going to be good at it immediately. You learn and grow.
Okay, so then you might start where it's, unless there's supposed to be a parallel between needing, like the paint representing his skills, but that feels like that's just a layer of frustration added.
Yeah, and not very. I think I'm just gonna have more art panels, but have it be at home, him painting.
I like
Or
it.
maybe I could do the resolution being him and his mom teaching him how to paint a background.
So yeah, and so if the tension is he doesn't know how to paint a background, it's not coming out right. The mentor factor is, it could be, well, first you could have a little sister come in and make fun of him, or you could have the mom see that he's frustrated, and the mom give both a regular tip, like a mentor on this is how you paint, like try this for the background, and it works. Or at the same time telling him to kind of chill out, or whatever version of that she does, right? Helping him process the emotions rather than, shut him down. But,
Maybe I can have her. I really like her like being like, this is great the way it is.
Yeah.
And bring about.
Well, if you can see the final scene clearest, or the mentor scene clearest, put that in first and leave the gaps to build to. Yeah, bust it out. But just pick one, because that's what this storyboarding is all about. Fast, like you throw it down, and if you don't like it, you change it.
Because I think like kind of frame it of like there's like the missing employee something at Appleton, which I know has something to do with the company, and it's like there's over the missing employees. We're still here. Come back to the studio. We need you. Whatever.
Okay, so yeah, deciding what the specific conflict is can sometimes help you make other decisions about the story. So try and draw that conflict scene. Draw the people in it.
Well, it's like it's more so it's more so unseen stuff. You know how like well horror games or like certain stories can have like more cryptic hidden like.
So do this
But
because you
have to find out the information from fully examining the material in the game.
So do this. Two things. You can see me on like a weekly basis at club, so you can always bring up further things. But for now, try and draw out just whatever the thoughts are,
Okay.
and just get them down. Because you can always ask me about them later, and we can workshop it. But that way you're producing it on the paper.
Okay.
As a place to start. And then if you don't like them, you can move it around. How are you two? Yeah. Okay. Remember, if it's taking you more than a minute per panel, you're probably spending too much time on the art. So storyboarding is about planning the overarching vision of the story. It's not about doing page by page beautiful art. So if you find yourself spending over a minute on a single cell at this stage, you're going to miss out on the creative flow of the big story. You can always lock in the vision. The idea is to get a rough picture, broad strokes painting of the story, and then start anchoring it with bigger details.
You're targeting me right now.
No. It's a very common thing to get caught up in the one thing. But you have to, that's why it's important as a writer to trust yourself to come back and do the deeper work too. But for the same reason you shouldn't write an essay.
Okay, but it doesn't have to be a scene conflict. It can be like an implication of a conflict.
I don't know because I was talking about something else.
Okay.
But for the same reason, when you write an essay, you don't want to write an essay sentence by sentence and make sure the sentence is perfect and clean and pretty before you go on to the next sentence. That makes for very unhealthy writers. You want to get the rough in, even if it's not super clear, and then go back and clean it up. Because sometimes you spend so much time on one frame or one sentence that you lose sight of the overall vision, and that sentence ends up getting cut, or that scene ends up getting cut by the end because it doesn't fit the story arc you're actually trying to tell. So try and do the fast version. See if you can do 30 seconds per panel for the rest of this. So give yourself 30 more seconds on the one you're on, and then 30 seconds for the next. And try and draw those out, 30 seconds at a time.
very hard for me.
It is one of the best strategies you can practice, though, for long-term success as a creative producer or writer
Doesn't mean to make it hard.
in any genre.
What does it solely look like?
Okay, it's like a tripod with a lip,
Oh, yeah.
if that helps.
Yeah, it does.
Keep going another minute or so, get the last two boxes filled in there with this sketch, quick sketch. Okay, for some of you that might have been uncomfortable. For a lot of people it is at first. The reason it matters to be able, the reason it's most useful and most effective to practice this type of planning for story is the same reason that a principle that applies in a lot of different contexts, whether you're leading a team, running a business, writing an essay, doing a narrative. You want to do this big picture planning because it sets the vision and purpose, and it makes sure that the ultimate purpose is aligning. And if you spend so much time on a single scene before you know if it fits the overarching theme or goal or promise or purpose, you're not going to be able to make as much progress, or you'll spend time on a piece of the story that will feel like you've invested in it and you've invested in the wrong thing after the fact. So then you have to go and you don't want to get rid of work you've worked on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you end up, for the same reason it's hard to cut a paragraph that doesn't really fit the rest of the essay, it's hard to cut something you've spent a lot of time doing the art on, even if it doesn't fit. So it helps you work through that early instead of burning through our limited time. It helps you prioritize. So with that, how are we doing on time? What do we have, 10 minutes left? Barely. So go ahead and share the, take turns, take less than 30 seconds to describe and walk through the story of what's on your paper. So you get 30 seconds each. So there's 3 sets of pairs here. So find someone to pair up with. And take 30 seconds each. If you're not done yet, you have to go with what you got. Kaylee. Kaylee, why don't you jump over with Julie? You guys can each take 30 seconds share.
We have like this,
Last game, last play of the game. So last game of the season.
This is the first chapter of the game.
Throws,
And
balls, fast.
like,
Yeah, 30 seconds, Julie. Keep it to the good stuff.
the main They're like, oh, let's do a little bit every game. Game to people. And then there's little
Jake's team wins the game.
things you can do. And starting, it's like everything's forgiven. That's a lot of forgiveness. It's still here, in the studio.
So we're in our nice
And then,
little
and then, and then like, and then you do the task, the task.
Dude.
Computer turns on, and the hand, you know, first person perspective, you just see the hands.
Yeah. So,
So like, he has
mine
like time,
is
like, yeah,
start of his
that's
house,
everything.
and we see the duck is painted. Painting his cat. Oh no, it didn't turn out perfect. It's not very good. So he starts crying.
So is that the end of the movie right there?
Fine, taste of those. Wipe them out.
Nice. Will you two go and share with them over there? Split it up. Kaylee, you were still going, right? So you're good.
No, I'm.
Oh, I thought you just
we're done.
started. So.
Do you want to see it?
Yeah. Tell me what you got.
So, started his house. When you come in, it's Bobothy. He's painting. And he's painting his cat. But oh no, it didn't turn out well.
Okay.
He doesn't like it. So he starts crying, but then his mom comes over and breaks it. It's great.
Very cool. What does she affirm the things, the strategies he does well? Is it
it's
just
in the
he's
dialogue? This is
Okay.
just the. She's like, this is great. You'll learn as you go. You learn blah blah blah.
blah blah blah? I like it. Let's see if I can find.
Croissant, Steve.
Reminds me of a baseball game. Motivated to it gets up to that. Like pressure and all. So the magic knows like the last ball in the game. Just pass it in. The main character gets the ball. Goes over the fence. He wins all alone like that. His whole team wins. Like cheer, fireworks, and like crazy around that.
So mine's about my two siblings, one of them hates the other. And so it starts off at a peaceful way where one of the siblings is practicing and enjoying it, and the sibling keeps talking their ear off, and so they get annoyed. And then the next day they're at school, and the sibling is still chattering away, so they're annoyed. Then they walk home, and their
Greg, did you
sibling
steal
still
something?
won't shut up.
I did not, right now at least, in this
And so
moment.
then there's this big argument where the sibling just tells the other to go away, and then this is really sad. And then it's at night, and they're just pondering what they
Trying
did,
to find a
and so they're
specific
guilty.
thing.
And so the thing things better, they make issues and cause forgiveness.
Trying to find a specific. I think it's this way. Okay.
I'm in pain.
Okay, so let's go over here. You said you're in pain?
Yeah, I have a cut on the top of my mouth.
Oh,
I cut it with a Dorito. It hurts.
that's no fun. Okay, let's see where the end of this is.
Steve, le croissant, Steve.
Okay, so I will say that for this last step that we're going to have, you have, I'm just going to do the fast version here. So, what you've done here is planned your rough storyboard as a step along the way. You don't have a script yet, you don't have the text fully built out, there's no dialogue. But you do have a sense of the scenes. And so what I usually recommend is 2 steps next. One, just take some time and develop the actual text. And it's okay to do that separate from the visuals. You can use them as a guide, or you can create it as its own document and go back and forth. And doing the inline dialogue and all of that fun stuff is a whole other workshop in and of itself. The other, and if you need resources on that, let me know, and I'll point you in that direction. Jerry Jenkins has some good stuff on dialogue. There's also, if you type in screenwriting and dialogue, you'll get a lot of back and forth about strategies for that. Yes, remind me later. The other thing I have people do is take this to the next version. And so what I'll encourage people to do is try and do some sort of rough storyboarding in a digital form to start working in trying to get this a little more anchored. And I'll show you the cheesy version. Actually, what I'm going to do is click through a video that I have. So, because the computer here is a little harder to bounce through. So, I have to get to a place where it actually works, theoretically. So, let's see. If we have, so we've got some storyboards here. I'm just going to make this full screen. I don't know why I didn't in the first place. So if we take someone's hand-sketched things, like what you just did, and we just go into a program like PowerPoint or Google Slides, and we want to find a way to just start moving that into the digital zone, we can go and say, okay, when we were looking at their storyboard, there was a princess, there was main doors, there was some text that they had laid out, and there was a stairway she walks down. So we're looking at this kind of small image over there. And all I did to get that process started was I grabbed some random shape that I could copy paste, and create a staircase. I could also go in and find some sort of clip art, those sorts of things. And I can do that to start roughing in to see how I actually want to lay out the page, to see what actually looks good, and can I do well-designed visual design. A lot of people, when they go to publish their own kids' books, it's not uncommon for the artists to do the art themselves, but it's also not uncommon for them to farm it out to someone who's really good at it. But giving them either a really nice hand-drawn storyboard like you guys have done, or the fast sketch version, or creating a digital rough-in, then people can go and play with the layout and that sort of thing. So this isn't a skill we're going to work on today. I'm just showing you that it's a possible next step in creating your kids book. So let me see if I've got a second version. So this is let me see, is this another version of the same? So this is walking through how did I get there, or a different scene. So in this one we had, I think, a car outside. Yeah. And there are some ways you can play. So part of playing with technology is recognizing when you are doing digital. I totally decapitated that lady because I wanted her head tilted a certain way. So when you're doing digital mock-ups, sometimes you can do things where you're just simply cropping in a sample image, right? So part of that is playing with visual design and thinking through how do I do a quick representation of my story, enough to give it to an artist who can then flesh out. Does that make sense? And sometimes as you're doing this, you realize, oh, some of the things I wrote in my story, I decide I don't like how that plays on the page. For the same reason someone might recast or recostume a character because they realize they hadn't really thought it through until they had them standing next to the other person. So we can look at these things as part of an ongoing process to make the story better, and also get to the next steps of publication. So just to recap the process, since I'm getting low on time. It's best with stories to start with characters worth hanging out with and knowing them deeply. Then put them in a setting that makes the things about them come to the surface in a meaningful way, or just get triggered, right? The things they hate, the things they adore, the people they trust. Something happens that creates tension with those values and the world, something about the world that's going to cause them or force them into a place to grow. So then we set the setting. As we design the story, if you're not in the habit of creating arcs, pick just the one. Like Kaylee was sharing, she had a lot of ideas. Pick one, do the short version, and if you can walk that small, simple, straightforward character arc through, beginning to end, you can have a kid's book. if you don't ultimately want a kid's book and you want a movie or a full-scale video game, you can scaffold up through publications. Like, that's part of the fun thing. It's really common in scholarly work for people to understand this. Like, I might start with a book review of research. I'll go and write a book review of someone else's research, and that's like 1,000 words. And then I might design a study that's in the same topic, and that takes me like 6 months. And ends up being a journal article, which is sometimes 3,000 to 8,000 words. And then, having taken that step, I'm continuing to build, and I end up with a series of articles that turn into a book project. So in the same way, starting with kids' books, you target a specific audience. It forces you to keep the story straightforward and simple, and helps you really essentialize who the characters are. And then you can always step back and say, well, if I can do this for one character for kids, I can then pull back and say, now I'm going to do it on a larger scale. If you can do a bunch of small stories, you can start weaving them together into a larger tapestry, right? So that's ultimately how you get epic fantasy, is you have people who are really good at individual character arcs and really good at knowing when to interrupt the character arcs to start a new one. That way, if you're left on a cliffhanger and you get introduced to a new character, you use that cliffhanger to hold the audience until that character's arc is started, and then you come back to the old character. So, there is a reason why I do like engaging with these sorts of activities, specifically with kids' books. This is one of them. It helps you, whatever narrative you're trying to build, it helps you focus on the main things, and also consider who is this for, who is the target audience. And if you do end up being able to shift that, it's a lot easier to add more mature themes than it is to take them away sometimes. And there are plenty of adults who are good with kids' books. Not all adults are happy with NC-17, right? And so if you want to ultimately get to some sort of horror film, it can help to start in this genre and see what changes. It helps you really think about what are the key features, what's necessary versus what's nice versus what's not needed at all. I think that's where I'm going to end. Yeah, because I'm over time now. So thank you for hanging out. I usually try and get you guys to talk more, but hopefully you had fun doing the story. You can ask me questions. My YouTube channel does have my email and a cell phone that students can message, so you're always welcome to send me questions or ask for more materials. But thanks for hanging out.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I think the last workshop of the day today is going to be about how using kids' books and designing games can help us develop empathy. If you're hanging out for that one, it starts at 3 o'clock.
Wait, so that one about games.
So that one is how to use or why I use games in kids' books to develop empathy.